Hey guys, how you doing? Welcome to Rukshan On X. Hope I'm coming through loud and clear. I am just setting up. Started a few minutes later today. Just coming home after a church group. So bear with me. I'm just getting my browser going so I can share the news with you guys. But hope you're doing well. Already see a few familiar faces have joined in. Welcome to Rukshan On X, guys. Chilled out show where we talk about the news of the day that's happening in Australia and also around the world. Got a few more international stories today from the US that we're going to talk about as well, and some other stories from Australia. I got actually a fair few news items. What am I doing? I'm just trying to fix the audio to make it come through nice and clear. There, Gaps Media, how you doing? Thanks for joining in. Montana Meow, hello, and Svetka, good evening to you as well. Thanks for joining in. I appreciate it. Let's have a look here. This going, it's working. I got to automate this setup so just like everything's ready to go, but I think it's working now. It's working now. Perfect. Awesome. All right, let's pull up the news stories as well. But let me know in the comments if you guys are watching, if you have any questions before we get started. We'll get right into it. So if you haven't joined up before, guys, this is a new show that I do most nights. I've been doing it now since last week. Took a break after last year and we're back doing the news stream, and you know, it's very chilled, it's very casual. As you can see, there's a comment stream as well, and your comments will go through and show up on the screen, and I'll respond to some of the comments as well. And you can also do super chats if you want to support the show. That's a great way of supporting the show. If you want to do super chats on YouTube, that goes towards supporting the work that I do. But regardless of any of that, please feel free to join in the conversation, because it's not meant to be like your regular news show. I prefer it when I'm just hanging out with you guys, answering questions. You guys kind of lead me in different directions as well, and we talk about what's happening. Right? That's why I do this, and it's good fun. I'm enjoying it. I'm enjoying the aspect of building a community doing this as well, and it's been a good few days doing this show, so I'm excited to continue doing this. Let's just put it this way. But let's have a look at some of your comments. We got one here from Adela. Hello, Rukshan, long time watcher of you and Avi. That's good. Nice to meet you. Nice to see you on here, and thank you for sharing that with me. And Marcus, spot old liberals out of the woodwork. I don't know exactly what that's in reference to, Mark Russell, but yeah, the liberals are kind of trying to be new and creative, if that's what you mean. Vicky, how you doing? Thanks for joining in the show. Mavis, how you doing, mate? Looking forward to hearing your thoughts tonight, Rukshan. Yeah, I got a few different things that I want to cover tonight. Baseline Benny, good to see you, mate. It's always good to see you. I feel like whether I go online during the day or nighttime, Baseline Benny is there. So it's going to be a good stream when Baseline Benny is in the house. We've got Stove Stone. Thank you. Hello, how you doing? It was a very long break. Yeah, I do remember doing a show towards the end of December, maybe, or November. And I'm like, okay, cool, guys, I'll be back soon. And I didn't come back till end of March or whatever. I did do random lives here and there when we had different things happening, but I didn't actually come back and do the Rukshan On X show. But I have made a consistent effort now over the last couple of days. I hope you've noticed, to do this consistently, so you guys know when I'm going to be online and just chit-chatting about news. And look, it is a work night for many people. It's the weekdays that I'm doing this show at night time. So I know many people obviously got to go to work, or maybe they're working already, and you usually hit the sack a little bit earlier. But there are some night owls out there. I know. I suffer from some type of insomnia. A lot of the times I'm up late at night working. So that's why it's easy for me to do this show late at night, because this is usually the time that I'm up consuming, all the news of the day. And it's the American hours as well, in a way, as America's waking up. A lot of the news from the US comes as well. And politics is a fusion, especially in Australia, of lots of different Western news from US and the UK and so on. So it's a good time to be up and catching up with the news. Okay, Mark says 25 years since we were debt-free federally. Yeah, it's been, will we ever get to that point again? I think that was was that with Costello during the Howard era? I'm guessing it's around that time, right? Shally says, "What do you think will happen next?" That is a. If I knew the answers to that, Shally, I would be a very rich man and probably not, doing doing this show off on some island, knowing exactly what would happen next. But I think I know what you mean. Obviously, we got to relate it to some topic or something that you're thinking about, and I can give you a more clearer answer. I'm just joking. Svetsy, good to see you again. You're joining from YouTube, not on Twitch. You've abandoned Twitch. And we've got here the Steve Stove. Did something happen to you in Vietnam, or are you Vietnamese, or you had a Vietnamese ex or something like this? Because you're very interested in Vietnam. I've still yet to do proper study on Vietnam. Stephen says, Trump on Rogan's advice is making psychedelics legal, so we understand this current nightmare. Look, I think psychedelics is actually really interesting. Obviously, the natural stuff as well. It obviously has its purposes medicinally that people are exploring, and this was kind of the use case originally as well before it was used as a recreational type of drug. It's good to see some common sense coming back and people exploring these type of psychedelics as well. I mean, I'm not opposed to that, and I think it's a good thing that Trump is championing that, at least at the moment. I don't know all too much about it, but I did see the announcement with Joe Rogan, so I think that's what you're referring to. What are we talking about? That's actually a good question. So I do have a few different topics. If I can share my screen with you guys. So we've got the DOJ in the US. I'm starting with some US news because I think it's consequential. But we have the DOJ in the US charging the Southern Poverty Law Center, the SPLC, this left-wing, group, think tank, whatever you want to say, organization, activist group, with wire fraud. And I'm going to get deep into that story because I think it's got some links maybe to what might be happening in other parts of the world, including Australia as well. So just to cut it short on what that is pretty much this left-wing organization was found by the FBI after an investigation, a thorough investigation, to have funded a lot of the right-wing groups in the US, funding a lot of their hoaxes, funding a lot of, when they call people racist and all these kind of exaggerated things that the left do. They had infiltrated or paid groups within the right. This is nationalist movements or neo-Nazi types, or the KKK were being funded by this left-wing group. So we'll watch the press conference that Kash Patel, the FBI director, held on that, and I'll go through some of my thoughts on it as well. So that's kind of the first story I'm covering. To that, we've also got the allegations against Kash Patel, the FBI director, saying that he's a drunk, and this is coming from the left. So the timing is quite interesting how these things happen. I'll also look at the early voting that started in Nepean, the by-election that's happening here in Victoria, and it's showing a good support there for One Nation, who are rising in support there with the polling that's being done. So that's a good news if you're a One Nation supporter. We've also got the polls federally that's showing One Nation even doing better than Labor in some instances. So that's really interesting, as well as related to the Farrer by-election that's happening in May 6th, I believe. So a bit of political news related to the upcoming by-elections, both here in the state of Victoria, in Nepean, as well as federally in the electorate of Farrer, which is the electorate that Susan Ley, the previous opposition leader for the Liberal Party, left. So that's coming up soon. Then we got this kind of video that I've seen from the Liberal Party here in Victoria as well. They've put out this interesting social media video where they're trying to be more hip and cool, more in the TikTok comedy style. So we'll have a look at that, and you guys can give me your thoughts on whether you think that style of video is effective for a political party and whether you believe the Liberals are being, are cutting across to the public. Tony Burke is my next topic. He said some very interesting comments today on immigration, where he was saying that, immigration, as far as the Labor Party goes, because he's representing for the Labor Party, they don't really care about assimilation. It's more about integration. So they don't really want to change immigrants, the attitudes to Australia when they arrive in this country. It is more about integration than that. So we'll look at that because those comments have been obviously hit social media, and people have a lot of opinions on that, as immigration is a hot topic at the moment. Then we got more than an overhaul to the NDIS. So there's a lot happening with the NDIS. We'll look at that. And then if we have time, I got a few more topics. I know there's a lot here. The show goes for about 2 hours. It could go a little bit longer if you guys are still here. You know, you can watch it back later as well. It's recorded, so you can watch it back in the morning if you have to go to bed. That's fine. But we've got here 3 million people in Australia that are over 65 to pay more for private healthcare. So there's been changes to private healthcare, particularly for older Australians. We'll try to look at that. We had one of the Labor stooges here, Anthony Carbines, with a horrific interaction with a journalist in relation to the tobacco fires and wars that are happening in Victoria. As always, I think the topic that's happening all around the world that people talk about, the Iran war, we'll touch on that if we have time. And then I've got a couple of others, Vivek Ramaswamy talking about American identity, if we have time. So typically I found when I'm doing these shows, we'll be able to hit maybe the first 5-6 topics in the time that we have before I also get tired, if that makes sense. So let's have a look at what you got comments are, and then we'll start the show after that. Let's have a read of what you guys are saying. Connor says, well, brother, I don't think I've stumbled across a Facebook Live in the last 5 years. Yeah, I mean, obviously, at one stage I was doing it a lot, and now it's just at certain times and, depending on what's happening. Yeah, definitely I'll touch on the Tony Burke comments. That's part of the stories that I'm going to talk about today. A.B. Parker says, I'm sorry to hear about the crap that you're going through. Thank you. Dean Adams says, Rogan is a drug-addled bum. Potentially. I mean, he does seem very interested in drugs. Why did Pam Bondi lose her job? Okay, let's just save that to when we're talking about the US. I'll try to remember that. Cash caught them out. Yeah, I think, look, the left is not very happy with the director of the FBI, Kash Patel. They're trying to say he's a drunk, but I think he's just been working overtime, and he's founded a lot of dirt on the left, the political parties. There's also going to be indictments coming, I believe, related to the 2020 election. So all these things are dropping. It took them a few years, obviously, to get all this stuff sorted out since the Trump administration took back the FBI under this new administration. And it looks like, the results of that are now becoming evident as these investigations, information around these charges come to light from the FBI and the DOJ specifically. Here someone says, are you happy with Beck Freedom still leaving that video up with you and Avi in? I mean, I've asked for the video to be removed. As it stays online, it just accumulates more views, which just makes a stronger case for myself. So, I mean, that's to their detriment. I haven't shared the video. I have responded to that particular video. A lot of people are making assumptions that I'm somehow upset about being included in a deportation video, or that, people are saying to deport me, which is just ridiculous. If you know my videos, if you know the content and the people that I talk with online, I'm happy to have a robust discussion about deportations and for people to say things about me, whether they can't claim that I'm an Australian or whatever. That comes with the territory. But the problem with that video specifically is that it makes connotations that I'm involved in raping people as well as other criminal activity. And that's where the problem is. So obviously I've seen lawyers, and I've also been in touch with the police. Those things are not on. I'm happy to have proper political debate. I'm happy for people to criticize me. But if you're going to defame people, make lies, put people in videos with rapists and criminals, or songs or lyrics which mention rapists and criminals, and leave that out in the open without defining exactly what's being presented in the video, and just have an image of an individual on there, it's got to be problematic. So I'm taking it very seriously. That's probably all I'm going to say on that. Paul is telling me to shut the F up. Rook Snake, he's got a name for me. I hope you feel good, Paul. How does it feel? You feel better now? Dean says, loved hearing Barnaby say One Nation will eat the major party's lunch with mustard and gravy today. Okay, I missed that one. It was interesting the other day. Albanese was wearing an orange tie, and he ended with "One Nation" at the end. I found that quite interesting. Did you remember a glass of water? I did one better because I've had a long day. I've just been out. I was at like the police in the morning. I was like, with lawyers or whatever. So I had a long day. Then I had to go to a church group. So I've got a V. Now, some of you might disagree with this, but I do have a V. This will give me some energy to keep going. I should actually open it and have a little bit as well. Let me just open it up now. Chandimal De Silva says, what do you think about the Min's laws declared unconstitutional, strange parallels with Despot Dance Victoria that you covered? Look, I think anytime you try to make laws around protesting, it's going to be very difficult. And there is a reactionary thing that governments do, state governments, even the federal governments, they do reactionary things when there's a problem in society. So obviously we had the horrific Bondi Massacre Terrorist Act, and a lot of these governments, if in hindsight, probably if we look at it from now, we probably overreacted in terms of how hard they went afterwards. And they push things through that obviously when it ends up in court and is challenged in that space, there might be problems that arise from it. But, when you're in government, you can then go back, revise those laws, change things around, tweak it, and still introduce something that fits in with those findings. So we see this happen a lot when it's reactionary laws. It's not uncommon. I won't touch on the Nick Shirley Act today. I will talk about that actually, because Nick Shirley is doing some great investigative journalism in California and the US. And you do have senators and legislators in the California government, Gavin Newsom's crew there, trying to make it illegal to do citizen journalism. That's what Nick Shirley's saying. And he's made some videos chasing them up on this as well. I generally think that their targets are off. I understand they're trying to push those laws, saying that they're trying to protect individuals or protect businesses from being identified and things like this. It is kind of a gray area once you start filming people randomly and putting up, allegations against them. I think the bar that you have to have for evidence has to be high. But when you're talking about government funding, and if these organizations are receiving government funding, it's a bit of a gray area, because I think it's valid to ask questions of these organizations, especially based off the documents. So it's one thing to go after private businesses, and you can get into a bit of hot water there. But with public businesses that are funded by taxpayer money, I don't see how it's too much of an issue to question them at their premises, question workers there, or investigate what they're doing and share details and information about these facilities, which are, at the end of the day, receiving public funds. So the fact that they're trying to control how this kind of reporting happens goes to show you that, there's governments, especially in California right now, which are worried about the way that citizen journalists like Nick Shirley, and we saw similar things here with Drew Pavlou and Pete doing the NDIS investigation, that these citizen journalists will go there and ask difficult questions that the media kind of doesn't do it because the legal team will tell them, it's not worth it. We don't want to rattle the government too much. As well as then, they're really worried that these private, citizen journalists will be up in their faces when it comes to investigating fraud and, catching people off guard. So, what normally happens is, for a media company, when they want to investigate something or they want to interview a company, they'll reach out to that public company, and then they'll send a media trained spokesman with media, friendly or media savvy answers that provides enough cover for whatever they're trying to hide or whatever narrative they're trying to run. But if you catch people off guard, if you catch workers at one of these institutions, these people aren't media trained. They don't really understand what's happening. They don't really know who you are. And they might say something that incriminates the whole business, which I'm saying is they might tell the truth. It sounds crazy, but they might actually tell the truth of what's happening, or you might film something which shows the truth of what's happening in that particular establishment. So I think they're trying to cover against that. And that's why they hate independent journalists. That's why they hate citizen journalists. It's something like this. Connor says, stuff anyone who is claiming you are not Australian. Yeah, I mean, look, obviously I'm a proud Australian. There's going to be people that have different opinions on this based on their ideological viewpoints. That is a valid debate to have, I guess. If people really want to have that, like I have no problem with that debate taking place, because we do discuss Australian identity a lot. We talk about it in the Voice to Parliament. It is a topic of political discussion of what is in Australia. It is just ingrained as a debate topic in Australia because of our history, particularly with Indigenous Australians and their claims to the land, and native title and all these kind of things. There's always a distinction between different types of Australians. So that's always going to happen. I don't necessarily have a problem with anything like that. Yaris says, I like this name. Seriously, Kukshan, you're on the wrong side. The right wingers will never treat you as one of their own. Which right wingers are you talking about? Like, and why do I even care? I don't know if you're on the right or the left, Yaris. Like, are you on the left because you feel like you're one of their own, like, and you belong? Like, I don't really care. Like, the views that I have are my, political ideas, my ideology. Like, I don't really care if other people don't accept me. It doesn't really come into it too much, mate. I don't need that validation, if that makes sense, Yaris. But I'm sure whichever groups that you're with are giving you all that great validation that you need. Does One Nation have a chance of winning Nepean? We'll get to that question actually later on. Rad says, Rukshan, what do you think of the Australia's response to the US war with Iran? It's quite obvious we don't want to hang on their coattails any longer. I think it's a bit reckless, to be completely honest. This delusion that a lot of the Greens have, especially that Australia can somehow defend itself if things ever got serious in our region, is quite delusional. And this belief that somehow the European allies who we align with on these kind of woke ideas a lot with, like the UK, for instance, they they're very hesitant to help and get involved in things. It's really been the Americans, if you look at the last couple of decades, that have been willing to put their hand up and go to the defense of many of their allies. And Australia is in need of such an ally based on our current circumstances, based on the geography of where we are, and of course based on the fact that our biggest trading partner might be China, but they are also potentially hostile towards Australia if things went down in Taiwan. So those considerations are important when we think about national security and our defense. And our relationship with America, I think, has been the worst it's ever been. And a lot of it comes down to the fact that we haven't really shown, moral support to the US in a way that I think the US, under its current administration, sees as being visible. Australia's kind of in the background with the UK, with all the other France and Spain, with all the other people who are surrendering, and in the background just waiting for things to get better and for the Americans to do everything. I'm not saying that Australia has to get involved in a war. I don't think America's asked Australia to do anything like this. I think they just asked them to be like a leader in this space, to put their hand up and say that we should do this, or we should secure the Straits of Hormuz, or we're going to send ships out there when the time is right. We're going to stand by our US allies. I think that's what's been missing from the US. So that's why the Trump administration has been hounding the Albanese government over their lackluster response to the US when it comes to this particular issue. That's it, Guantanamo. We are the Rookwits. All right, guys, let's I can't help myself. Just so many names. Rucksack. Oh, F up, Rucksack. So funny. Yeah, I agree with you, Dean. We should have been a good ally and offered help. Yeah, and help doesn't have to be military help. Like, the US doesn't really need the Australian military's equipment or anything like this. I think they got that side of things covered it is really just the moral support and just being a leader, but being upfront. Australia rising to the occasion. Because what does that do? It puts pressure on the British. It puts pressure on the French. These are traditional allies. Like, this is the coalition of the willing, right, during the Middle East crisis that we've had. And that's what I think the Americans expect, because, for sure, America's got Australia's back. If things ever really went down, that's who we're depending on. That's who we're calling. We have strategic partnerships like AUKUS, the Five Eyes relationship. There's a lot of strategic partnerships with the US, which are very important to our defense and our national security. We're talking about a country, the continent the size of Australia, with 25 million people. Neighbors above us, like Indonesia, for instance, a much smaller space than Australia. I think there's about 165 million people. Like, you have to understand, we're surrounded by much more larger armies, right? In some ways, more capable in doing some damage to Australia if things ever went south with something. We are not a world superpower militarily in that sense. We have a really good military and a good history of participation and good fighting spirit. We have all of those attributes, but we don't have the numbers that many other countries around us have, especially China. We don't have the equipment, we don't have the weapons, we don't have the defense capabilities if things really got serious. And what guarantees our safety and security in the Pacific, in Australasia right now, Oceania, whatever, is really our defense pact with the US, more than anything else. That's the truth of it. No country would touch Australia because they know that the US will be there. You're literally, if you fight Australia, you're fighting the US. And of course the British, if things really got bad, the French, after they've surrendered, they'd probably try to help us as well, right? So that's the truth of it. We just don't have the numbers, we don't have the equipment or the capability of a country like China. So we need the help of these kind of allies like the US. So guys, we'll go to the first topic that we're going to be talking about, and that is the DOJ. DOJ charges the Southern Law Poverty Center with wire fraud. So let me just bring that link up. We'll watch the video and then we'll talk about that as well.
Is to announce what the general just told you. The Southern Poverty Law Center, in a massive sweeping indictment, has been charged with allegations of fraud and using the banking system to perpetrate that fraud. I just want to talk about a couple brief things here. The Southern Poverty Law Center themselves advertise to raise money to dismantle violent extremist groups for a period of at least a decade. They use their donor network to raise money to purportedly dismantle violent extremist groups. However, the SPLC, the Southern Poverty Law Center, used the money they raised from their donor network to actually pay the leadership of these very groups. I just want to say that again. They used the fraudulently raised money by lying to their donor network, thousands of Americans, to go ahead and actually pay the leadership of these supposed violent extremist groups. The groups, as the general laid out, include the Ku Klux Klan, the United Klans of America, Unite to Right, National Alliance, the National Socialist Movement, the Aryan Nation Motorcycle Club, and the National Socialist Party of America, and also the American Front. In at least one of these matters, our investigation revealed that funds were used to facilitate the commission of further state and federal offenses, totaling over $3 million. Furthermore, our investigation revealed that the Southern Poverty Law Center, on top of perpetuating this widespread, decade-long, multi-million-dollar fraud, conducted more criminal activity. They attempted to hide their criminal activity from our financial banking network. They set up shell companies and entities around America so that the financial institutions that we rely on as everyday Americans were deceived in believing that money was not coming from the Southern Poverty Law Center in the perpetration of this scheme and fraud, but rather fictitious entities they stood up to perpetuate this ongoing fraud. This is a serious and egregious violation of a group that purported to dismantle violent extremist groups, but in turn actually only fueled the hatred. This is an important case brought by President Trump's administration. We're thankful for the president for his leadership and funding of not just the FBI and DOJ, but his commitment to go out there and wipe out fraud and conspiracy and waste and abuse wherever it occurs, including the Southern Poverty Law Center. Even though this money was made to appear to be coming from legitimate people and legitimate entities, we at the FBI, with our great partners at the Department of Justice and in the state of Alabama, were able to comb through a decade worth of material, a scheme that took a decade to build, so that we were able to follow the money, because money never lies, and they got caught. As the Attorney General said, these charges are varying, they are widespread and wide-ranging, and this investigation is very much ongoing. Today, we're here to announce the charges of the Southern Poverty Law Center, and this investigation and the individuals who are responsible will be brought to justice. Thank you, General.
So that was a snippet from the press conference from the FBI director and the DOJ. So if you're kind of wondering what's going on, I'm just going to read some of this tweet from Kanoka the Great. The DOJ has charged the Southern Poverty Law Center with wire fraud, false statements, and conspiracy to commit money laundering. The SLPC secretly funneled $3 million in donor funds to violent racist extremist groups. Now, you might be wondering why this is important. If you're new to all this, the SLPC is like a far left-wing organization. It is like as left as you can get, and they've been involved for years in the United States of America, particularly through using their relations with the media, with social media companies, as well as with left-wing governments to censor, to remove people from online platforms, to have people, organizations try to be thrown in jail. They have done a lot of damage, and they've raised hundreds of millions of dollars off these causes that they've fought for, which is, predominantly far left-wing causes against the right. But it turns out now, after this investigation, that at least $3 million of the donor funds that they've received, they have sent that to the Ku Klux Klan, the American Nazi Party, Aryan Nation, United Klans of America, Unite the Right, National Alliance, National Socialist Movement, Sadistic Souls Motorcycle Club, and the American Front. A lot of these are what would be, the left would say, are far-right organizations or extremist organizations or Nazi organizations. And they've been funneling hundreds of thousands of dollars to their leaders and to other individuals in those groups. So that is what this investigation has found. And for a long time,
We're here today is to announce
what happens is with these groups is they use the fact that these groups are on an extremist list. We can have a look at it here. They use the fact that these groups are on an extremist list that, they support Donald Trump, they support right-wing ideas, for example. And then they say, we've got to strengthen the laws. We've got to jail these people. We've got to come after this particular group. We've got to take them offline. And they've been doing this for decades, right? But all this is coming out now. All of this fraudulent behavior, all of this illegal money laundering that they've done through these type of organizations. And even the hoax, like Charlottesville hoax. I don't know if you guys remember that. That was the original hoax where the Trump said there were fine people on both sides hoax that the media lost their minds over during 2016. That time, right? The first presidency of Donald Trump, his first term. That's when they lost their minds over this Charlottesville hoax. I'm calling it a hoax because it was like a hoax thing that they did because Trump just said there were good people on both sides caught up in the crossfire. But they were trying to make it like, oh, Trump was saying the Nazis are good. It wasn't that at all. But what this has shown is that even to the Charlottesville individuals involved in that, Unite the Right, that group, I think they received around $300,000 during that time from SPLC while they were blaming these groups for causing that drama. So that's how crazy this particular finding is, this particular lawsuit that's happening, these charges that have been laid. And the reason I'm bringing this up, even though it's in American news, we have similar problems here in Australia. We have similar problems. We have these, kind of strange right-wing groups that dress like weirdos and march around, say weird profanities and weird things that to the extreme of what normal decency is, what we'd normally recognize as being decent, let's say, as a society. And they push the envelope. And then based off that, our governments here in state or federal use their comments, use their actions to introduce more laws, more draconian ways of, keeping surveillance of us. more ways of disbanding the political right, especially. Like, it's targeted specifically towards the right side of politics. So everything becomes, linked to these kind of Nazi groups. So they use whatever leverage that these groups give them by being ridiculous in public to leverage that, to then use that against the right here in Australia. And that's what they've been doing in the US. That's been found out. We've got actual evidence of that happening in the US now. And for a long time, we've been suspicious that those kind of things are happening in countries like Australia and the UK as well, with maybe federal authorities being involved in these, or some of the people in these organizations actually being feds or police or linked to police, counterintelligence types, right? Or people trying to set up false flags. So there was an interesting video that Senator Alex Antic from the Liberal Party, one of the good members of the Liberal Party, shared a while ago. So I'll just share that video actually. So this was a Charlottesville hoax. So this was the one where they kind of walked with the tiki torches, and everyone was up all crazy about that, right? Turns out they were all paid. Anyway, let's find Alex Antic's video. Here we go.
President, the March for Australia was an overwhelmingly peaceful event held across Australian capital cities last weekend. 99.9% of the attendees were there for the right reasons, expressing their frustration over the terrible state of the country. The participants were everyday Aussies from all backgrounds, united with a concern for the terrible state of the country and Australia's future. Then enter the appalling National Socialist Network, or the NSN, labelled far right by the media, but using the term socialist in their name, which always strikes me as being odd. Now, the NSN are a strange group, not face-tattooed overweight men like we've come to accept from these tights, but the oddly clean-cut, preppy-looking ones. As someone said to me the other day, seems like they're straight out of Central Casting. For the last few years, these men have been turning up to similar events every now and then, mostly masked, but sometimes not, but certainly right on cue. Why don't we know more about these people, and how come a group with so few numbers gets so much media attention? I think that's weird. And how come the leader of the group just happened to be in the area right as the Premier of Victoria conducted a press conference with multiple cameras around? Must just be an incredible coincidence. Their stunts seem almost like pantomime. One would say cartoon-like if the subject matter wasn't so appalling. It's very odd, actually, and none of it seems to make sense. But one thing's for sure, though, these people don't speak for the views and concerns of everyday Aussies. But that said, there's no doubt how useful they've been for the government, the media and the establishment that's hell-bent on trying to subdue a dissent of the growing in mainstream Australia about a country in decline. And I think that's odd.
So that was last year, Alex Antic talking about this. And look, I'm not saying that all nationalists are like that, and there's not really truly legitimate white nationalists or these kind of NSN Nazi types that show great reverence to Hitler and celebrate his birthday and have photos of him and do the Roman salute and love all that stuff. There's legit people that are into all these things, but it is not out of the question if in the US we have organizations like the KKK and people within the KKK taking money from left-wing organizations, right, that have them listed on their website as extremists to create, false flags and hoaxes. It is not out of reason that the same things would be happening in other countries as well. It's actually more likely than not that this is happening. And it's more likely than not, for sure, that there are federal agents or police involvement, informants within these groups running in high levels of leadership, so they get all the information that they can for intelligence purposes. Now, what our intelligence services and the police decide to do with these connections, I can't speak to. I don't know, but it would be remiss of the police or the AFP not to have infiltrated these groups. Like, that is a part of their job, really. You wouldn't want these homegrown, almost like terror groups, some of them, the way they behave, to go unchecked. So what level of influence do the police have in the decisions that these groups are making? These are questions that we should ask. They're valid questions. Now I know the NSN have disbanded after all the drama that they caused, and we can trace a lot of the changes which have happened in Australian laws around speech, hate speech, all these kind of topics that we discuss at length, to the actions of groups like the NSN. Like the authority for the governments to change the laws really came through the actions of groups like the NSN. That can be shown very clearly. So this is not just like theory. Those things are very interlinked, interwoven. And that's kind of what Alex Antic was talking about. Because when you have just genuine people with genuine sentiments and issues, there always seems to be an extreme angle that is being parroted and paraded and talked about by both the mainstream media and the government. And you really have to ask yourself, after seeing what's happened in the US with these groups taking hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars from left-wing, far left-wing groups, controlling them, really, what is happening in other places as well. Because it's the same playbook. It is the same playbook. Let's just keep moving. So with all of this, right, there is a massive attack as well on Kash Patel, the director of the FBI. So the attack that they've gone after on Kash Patel, I'll just bring it up on Al Jazeera here, because they're quite neutral compared to the US media when they cover US stories like this. I prefer to not get that slant that you get from CNN, which goes one way, and Fox News, which goes the other way. This, the Qatari news for American news, especially if it doesn't involve the Middle East, tends to be a little bit more neutral. So FBI chief denies allegations of drinking and negligence. FBI Director Kash Patel denied he was ever intoxicated on the job or absent from duty following a report published in The Atlantic. He's filed a $250 million defamation lawsuit against the magazine for its report alleging his behavior posed risks to the US security. So let's just quickly watch this video, and then I'll give you some of my thoughts on this as well.
I can say unequivocally that I never listen to the fake news mafia. And as when they get louder, it just means I'm doing my job. This FBI director has been on the job twice as many days as every director before me. What that means is I've taken half as many days off as those before me. What that means is I've taken a third less vacation than those before me. What that means is that this FBI with this Department of Justice has dropped the murder rate 20 points. I'm on the job. I'm the first one in. I'm the last one out. I'm like an everyday American who loves his country, loves the sport of hockey, and champions my friends when they raise a gold medal and invite me in to celebrate. I've never been intoxicated on the job, and that is why we filed a $250 million defamation lawsuit. And any one of you that wants to participate, bring it on. I'll see you in court.
I like Kash Patel. I think he's a good FBI director. And I think, he's really bringing the heat here to the media by challenging them on this with this lawsuit. And, all of this stems from the fact that Kash Patel shared a photograph, or someone shared a photograph of him after the US hockey team won the gold medal at the Olympics. He was with the team in the back rooms and celebrating with them and drinking with them. So from that, they've fabricated this whole story. This is my personal opinion, that he's somehow a drunk, because those images became viral of him drinking with the winning hockey team. Completely ridiculous. It's like if, someone in their private capacity, even in their formal capacity, but was at a sports game, like a final, and Australia won the finals, and they were hanging out with the team at the back, and everyone celebrating and drinking from a cup or something, and you took part in that. And it's like saying, oh, they were drunk because of that. It's not. Like, this is a part of American culture, people drinking after winning a big sports game. It's not necessarily a big deal. Now, some of the targeted attacks, it's like he's like Indian, his heritage. So, he's not America first, and he's controlled by, Israel. He's controlled by Trump. He's not, non-biased or whatever as FBI director, all this kind of stuff as well. The usual stuff. But they've gone with Kash Patel saying that, no, he's just a drunk. He's never at work. He's always just drunk on the job. He's permanently drunk as the FBI director. But at the same time, from my recollection, from going back to 2016 with the FBI directors like Comey, right? Remember that guy? Douchebag. And even the guy that they had after that, I can't remember his name right now. I hardly saw them do anything. Right, we with under Kash Patel, we've had so many indictments against, like we just looked at the first story, the left-wing funding by this left-wing organization of the KKK. Like, there's been so many instances like this under Kash Patel and the FBI where Trump has been getting the job done, the things that he's promised to prosecute, where possible, are getting done. Now, I know there's a sore point amongst many Republicans, even, and a lot of Trump's critics when it comes to MAGA. I think, the Epstein files, and someone was asking about Pam Bondi before. I think the Pam Bondi thing, Trump really wanted her to maybe be a bit more ruthless on some of the things that she was doing and some of the expectations that Trump had in terms of going after particular people that had, questionable, questionable. How do you put this? I'm not saying Trump was trying to force her to do something, but questionable things that we saw in the lead up to the 2024 election and even 2020 election. Sorry. So there's a lot of those kind of things going on in the background, and it's before the midterms. Really, you want to clear out people for the next leg, and I think that's what's happening with people like Pam Bondi. They want to move on. It was quite amicable. You haven't seen the dirt come out as people like that leave Trump's administration. It's been quite amicable. The only guy that's become a traitor is that traitor Joe Kent that went on Tucker Carlson. That guy's obviously lost his mind, and he's making up all sorts of things that he would not even be privy to. I've seen him challenged in debates by just ordinary people, and he comes off looking like a total idiot. So that's not someone that's legitimate. I don't know how he ended up there, but yeah, that's my views. Let's have a look at your comments, guys, and then we'll go over to the next stories, which are more based in Australia. What are you guys saying? We got here from Randomic saying that Lash, so Cash Patel, that is an idiot. You can't be serious. Cash failed up. No, I think he's been quite successful, to be completely honest. Harry says that Albo is doing what the WEF wants. Cash has been flying around on those private jets. Look, they're making a big deal of all this stuff as well, but the FBI director is under heavy security all the time. I think what people don't realize is a lot of the US administrative staff, especially people in counterintelligence, the DNI, the FBI director, people in the DOJ, a lot of them are under heavy protection because, you don't want something to happen to them. So there are certain requirements to take when they have to go somewhere or when they have to do something. There's different levels of security. So people mistake that for them taking privileges beyond what an ordinary person is. These are not ordinary people. The director of FBI is not an ordinary person. I would not want, if we had the director of the FBI, for instance, and I was an American, I would not want him traveling in a passenger plane with everyone else. Like, you have to take into account security. Because if something happens, these are the people that need to be making decisions, obviously. There's a lot of people here wanting to know about Epstein or not happy with Epstein. So Twitch comment, could be a bot. Best viewers viewer 14.ru. Looks like a Russian website to get more Twitch viewers. Sorry, man, I'm not interested. Yeah, Bondi wasn't doing enough. Yeah, look, Trump really wants people in there like Cash Patel and others that get in there, do like a bit of the dirty work, do the uncomfortable things, do things where, you're going to get bad press. Like Cash Patel gets bad press, but you're seeing Trump is being very loyal to Cash Patel and others like him because they do the work. That's really all Trump wants. The attacks from the media will come. This is Trump's MO. He's always attacked by the media. I don't think he cares about the media saying things about his staff. Like, it's not a big deal to him as long as they're doing the work. And I think Pam Bondi was having a few issues with, being in that environment of Trump's, especially when she was being hounded by the Democrats and everyone else when it came to these files and how they were released to the public, right? It became a bigger story than maybe it should have under her watch. Hey Crunchy, how you doing, mate? Thanks for joining in the show. Good to see you. Good to see you. We just got started an hour ago, but actually an hour's already gone, and I've only talked about Kash Patel and the FBI. I hope you guys are enjoying this. So next up, guys, we've got One Nation surges into equal first place. Let's have a look at this story. One Nation hits record high to catch Labour in stunning Sky News polls as Albanese's support plummets after horror fortnight. One Nation has surged to equal first place in the latest Sky News polls, tying with Labour on primary vote for the first time in history. All right, very important. This is historic. The Sky News polls YouGov poll caps off horror fortnight for Labour, which recorded its lowest level of public support since polling began. Labour has fallen 3 points to 27%, while One Nation rose 2 points to match it at 27%. Meanwhile, the coalition's primary vote remained at a near historic low of 20%, with the Greens climbing to a record high of 14%. The most recent polling conducted from April 14 to 21st surveyed 1,501 Australians in a representative sample of voting population. Let's have a look here. Federal voting intention. You can see here, One Nation and Labour are pretty much neck and neck. Did you ever think you would be seeing these polls last year where we have One Nation now challenging Labour, and you got the coalitions kind of flatlining here on their support? The Greens, we don't need to talk about the Greens, and the Independents and Teals or whatever down here. It is quite remarkable. I think it's historic in the sense that this is one of the first times a party like this, a minor party in a long time, or a party outside of Labour and the Liberal Party, has been either equal or on top of a poll nationally. Like that's how historic the achievement of One Nation is. So regardless of whatever happens coming up federally, and I think a lot can happen in this next 2 years federally, and as definitely as we see what's happening in state elections, if One Nation can keep up this momentum, if One Nation can keep winning seats, if One Nation can keep putting up candidates that show that they're making a difference, more and more people will become comfortable with the idea of voting One Nation. Like, people already are, but they need to reach the masses to actually get more people into positions of power in government. Well, when I say government, I mean in the Houses of Parliament, as even the opposition or a coalition type opposition. They could keep growing. It just really depends where One Nation goes from this. I think the Achilles heel of One Nation, really, and I'm being completely honest here, the Achilles heel of a party like One Nation is that it revolves around an individual, Pauline Hanson. Like, she is the most well-known face of One Nation. She is, when people think One Nation, they think Pauline Hanson. And if you're going to be an effective political party into decades to come, you have to be able to be more than just your leader. And I think they're trying to do that in a way, but she is the beating heart of One Nation. And there will come a time when Pauline Hanson, retires and steps down from politics, right? She might not do that for a long while yet, but there comes a time, right? And it is how One Nation defines itself at that moment, which I think is really important to their survival as a political party that is thriving, that stays in the conversation of our discussions around politics, and is included in the future of Australian politics as well. I think that is their Achilles heel, just because Pauline Hanson is so well known. She's the face of the party that, how they manage that will be very important to the future success of the party. But right now, as we look at One Nation going into the federal election and these state elections, they are looking very strong. And you got to give credit to One Nation. It is not just down to the fact that the mood of the country shifted. It's also down to the fact that they are hitting the right notes when it comes to getting their message out to the people and across to people in both the Liberal side, people on the fence, and even maybe Labour voters or undecided voters. Some of them are coming around to One Nation. That is the only way that you're going to get results like this with this kind of shift in the polls. Anyway, let's have a look. I had a video as well. So this is the early voting in the PN. Let's have a look at the news story.
Voting is underway in the Nepean by-election. On the same day, new polling showed support for One Nation is continuing to surge.
OK, let's bring in our state political reporter Heidi Murphy now. Heidi, Pauline Hanson's party is really firming as the third political force here in Victoria.
Yeah, and we will know very soon just how forceful voters are starting to have that say in that Nepean by-election. Statewide, this result polling in today's Age has the coalition edging out Labor on primary vote. But the big takeaway is One Nation locking in above 20%, where they have been sitting for months now. This firms them in that position, and that comes as no surprise to One Nation Senator Malcolm Roberts, who was in Rosebud this morning.
Very, very positive, very positive. A lot of people coming here saying they used to vote Liberal, they're not voting Liberal anymore, they're voting One Nation.
And Heidi, that same polling had a bit of an uncomfortable surprise for Labor on all of those union corruption claims.
It found 70% of voters, so the vast majority want there to be a royal commission into the claims of $15 billion being lost to organised crime through CFMEU corruption on the big build. The government had been hoping this would drop off the radar. These numbers say it has not. And tomorrow, the corruption-busting barrister who dropped this bombshell at a Queensland inquiry will be back in the stand for cross-examination. More evidence from him will be the last thing Labor wants right now.
We'll see what happens tomorrow. OK, Heidi, thank
So there's a report there from the by-election. I did see someone ask an interesting question. I will answer this question. Let's just go to this one. This is from Kim Woods. Kim says, why are you paid? Are you part of the party? Why are you pushing them unless you are getting paid? Well, there's two things going on here. The first thing is that the media is consistently talking about One Nation, like they are in the news. And the reason that's happening is because they are featuring more in the polls. So there's a time when, talking about One Nation for the media was a choice. As in, it shouldn't be like that, but it was a choice they made because, for a controversy. Now it's different. Now when you're polling at these numbers, when you had the results that you had in South Australia, with them getting 4 seats in the lower house and 3 in the Senate, when you have these results, they become a part of the story all the time, especially in pollings. You have to understand how historic it is to see a minor party like One Nation polling at the levels they are, especially with 2 by-elections, right? There's an election coming up in a week and a half in Nepean, and then there's the Farrer by-election a couple of days or a week after that. So it's consequential right now, the performance of One Nation to these particular results. Why do I talk about it? Well, I'm not a big fan publicly. I'm not a big fan of the uni party. I don't really support the Labor. I don't support the Liberals. I'm very open about my political views. And I see One Nation as a third party, a minor party that can shake up politics in Australia and, move the conversation into areas, that I personally publicly support. Like some of the ideas and the policy ideas of One Nation are ideas I support. The consistency of Pauline Hanson and the things that she talks about over a long period of time are things that I personally support. So I'm not going to hide that fact. But no, it's not paid. It's not anything like this. It's just obviously I'm forced to talk about it because it's a part of the news cycle and the news story. And then the fact that I do align personally with some of their policy views. And I think it's a good thing. It's a healthy thing, actually, for a democracy to have this type of third party, minor party coming in there to ruffle some feathers. Because the best representation that we can get as people is when there is, within the parliament itself, right, when you have a mixture of different ideas, people, pushing back against ideas they don't like. When you have the current conditions we have now, with just Labor having this massive majority, and with the help from the Greens that they get, which are 2 parties who are very much ideologically aligned, even though they have some differences. When you have a situation like that, and then also the Teals, they're just ramming things through. Okay, they're just ramming things through. And it's okay if Parliament slows down a little bit. It's okay if there's a lot more debate happening. It is okay if there's a third force in there that's stirring the pot a little bit, right? Because ultimately what that means is that more views of Australians are represented, legislation and bills go through more scrutiny, and more compromises are made. Generally, you get the best laws, you get the best legislation when there's compromises made, right? When one party can't just push things through exactly how they want. Laws are always going to be changing. They're going to always pass legislation. There's always things that government has to do. That's a given. But if you can have compromises along the way, if you can have people, putting in amendments and passing those amendments, if you can have, things like what happened with the misinformation bill being struck down, if you can have things like that happening, it creates obviously a better country overall, I think, in a democratic sense. Okay, not everyone's going to be happy with this. There's people that vehemently hate one nation. That much is obvious. But, it is a part of democracy. Like, you're going to have these things happening. And the more it happens, I think, is actually better for Australian politics. Because for a long time, it's been Liberal and Labor. People call them the uni party. They act very much, as the same two wings of the same bird. But people say this. They act in the same manner. And there's very small differences actually between them on slight ideological views. But for the most part, people think that they're ruling the nation by being like this for a very long period of time. So, yeah, One Nation shakes things up. I like them shaking things up. That's why I support them. I think it's a good thing, personally, for democracy. And, it's nothing to do with payments or anything like this. All right, guys, let's have a look at more of your comments. I've got another story as well. So, just got the polling in Farah. So for the by-election there. Actually, not the polling. So this is important. So One Nation and Coalition confirm preference deal over independent. New release One Nation how to vote cards confirm the party will preference Coalition above Michelle Milthrope. So I think, and the Coalition, they're sharing that they are preferencing each other, which is great to see. Because we did have initially that little tiff between Senator Matt Canavan, who you can see here in the photo, the new leader of the Nationals. When he became the leader, he did have some comments about Pauline Hanson. But you are now seeing them working together in the interest of a very kind of similar policy platform in a way. Like, there's not too much difference in terms of ideological views between One Nation and the Liberals. It's just Pauline Hanson is more consistent, and she is more, a traditional Liberal going back a few decades. Like, these are normal Liberal ideas that she's talking about. It just seems extreme because we've gone so far to the left under Labor and the Greens. So that's good to see. So that's actually really good to see that they're working together. At the same time, people are saying that in Victoria, because we have the election coming up, we have our state election coming up in November, that the Liberal Party here in Victoria, who is much weaker, actually, very weak, even though they're polling all right, still they're very weak as a party because they have a lot of infighting, a lot of issues that are beyond just politics, right? Within the party itself. We discussed this at length. You just need to look at the issues around Moira Deeming and John Pizzuto, for instance, right? Dysfunctional party. Anyone can kind of say that. They are trying to turn a new leaf under Jess Wilson, the opposition leader that's in there right now. And they've released this new social media video. Preparation for the election, of course, this is all campaign material. Let's have a look at this comedic style, TikTok style, new age, Liberal Party election campaign video. Let's have a look.
Labor started rolling out their budget announcements. Here's a few you might have missed.
Following its wild success, Jacinta Allen is set to give every Victorian home a machete bin. Click here for yours. We received...
It's finally turned up.
The Victorian government has announced a new pothole tourism campaign. And the best part is, you can literally go anywhere in the state to see one. How's the Serenity?
The Victorian government's got a new breathing tax. That just cost me $5.
The Victorian government have established a door-knocking team to help pay back some of the almost $200 billion debt. I'm a debt collector and I'm wondering if you would like to contribute.
Graffiti has officially been heritage listed. The state government will no longer clean up graffiti to preserve local character.
$15 billion of taxpayer money is going to bikies and criminals and paying for strippers on government worksites. Oh wait, actually that one's true.
Whether it's potholes or $200 billion budget black holes, you are paying the price for Labor's waste and mismanagement. It's time for a fresh start this November.
So it's very interesting where political advertisement, has gone, because this is made to look like it's shot on a phone, obviously in the vertical format. It's a bit higher production quality, of course, but it's made for consumption on mobile phones. It's targeted, obviously, towards a younger crowd. It's a lot of comedy involved, and comedy does work in terms of keeping people's attention spans. Unfortunately, the generation that we are in right now, this is the kind of stuff that sticks to people's heads, like this type of comic relief / political videos. They seem to be somewhat effective on the current population. So they are going down this path. Labour, the Greens, they've always done a lot of this social media stuff, right? Because they've always had people who are very cringe as a part of their parliaments. But now we're seeing the Liberals get in the action. Let me know your thoughts on their new style of political campaigning, advertising, whatever you want to call it. I think, look, it works to humorize. I think I'm seeing a comment here. Humor is great when it's done by comedians. Oh, hang on, they are. Look, I think they're doing okay. Politicians are never going to be really funny. They're never really going to come across like that. There's very little politicians that have, a unique personality outside of what people view them as politicians. Like, I think it's really just like Donald Trump in my eyes. He's one of them who can be comedic when he's speaking, but also be serious at the same time, if that makes sense. He's very good at that. He's a master of that art form of using comedy or stories that have nothing to do with what's actually going on to explain something. When he's talking about Rosie O'Donnell, for instance, like, he's very good at this storytelling. These guys, they're trying. I think, let's see what happens and if they make more of these. But overall, the best thing, and this is a comment from someone called Katie here,
Rolling out their budget announcements.
Victoria is in a terrible mess. Time for the Liberals to cut a deal with One Nation. Save Victoria. And that's the truth. Like, if you look at nationwide, the mood of the nation, and if you really, really want to beat the Labour Party, because they have a stronghold in Victoria, right? They seem to pull through in Victoria somehow. If you really want to beat them, why not enter a coalition with One Nation? I think that would make people enthusiastic. I know it's a drawback for the Liberals in terms of their prestige. The coalition, for instance, they have prestige. They've had to bend the knee to Pauline Hanson in a way. But I think it serves the purpose of, if you really want to save Victoria, if you really want to help the people of Victoria, concessions are going to have to be made by political parties like the Liberals and One Nation to work together to get this done, right? Because can you imagine if, One Nation, at the end of this result of the Victorian election, the Liberal Party and One Nation have enough seats that together they would defeat the Labour Party, but separately they wouldn't. I mean, you would want to think that they would work together and form some sort of coalition, especially if it looks like that's what's going to happen. You'd want them to do that earlier, just to build up the enthusiasm and get that done. But, there's other considerations that, right? When political parties think about these type of relationships, there's always other considerations. There's always egos involved, right? There's always a reason why political parties cannot work together. And I think for the Liberals, it's really the fact that they would have to eat a lot of humble pie if they go to Pauline Hanson. After all the things that this party has said about One Nation over many decades, and about Pauline Hanson specifically, they'd be eating a lot of humble pie to go to her to form any type of coalition, whether at the state level or federal level. I think that's one of their major issues. Not so much that they don't care, they don't care about the people enough that they can put that beyond them. Especially in Victoria, the Liberal Party is very political. They're very childish. You've seen that with the more redeeming John Pizzuto thing. I mean, for God's sakes, they ended up defaming one of their own members over some made up fake hoax by, again, going back to the start of this video when we're talking about those NSN types, right? They crashed the women's rally and that led to all that drama. So I don't think they're capable of it, but it would be great to see them form some type of coalition. Dean says, great comment, Dean. The federal and state Liberal parties still don't realize they are in danger of extinction. Yeah, I think, look, they think like they can ride this out. They think this One Nation thing is a flash in the pan, that this is just like a one-off thing. I don't know. Like, again, depending on how One Nation does this could be a permanent thing. Like, people could permanently be like, nah, we're never going to vote Liberal again. And that's the problem for the Liberal Party, especially as the voting demographics change and Labor has secured more, immigrant voters, let's say, and the younger voters might be leaning more towards the left. It's a problem for the Liberals, especially if they're, the older audience that they do usually garner moves away from them as well. Yasmin says, it's so obvious why they keep winning in Victoria. It doesn't make a scientist to answer that. Let me know the reason, Yasmin. I might have missed an earlier comment. VicPower 6677 says, a coalition between One Nation and the Liberals is the only way we'll get a change of government in Victoria. I still think so. Even if the Labor Party's doing bad in the polls right now, let's say, they seem to pull through. There's a lot of places in Victoria which are totally cooked. The demographics are totally cooked towards Labor, and doesn't matter how disastrous their lives might be under Labor, they will vote Labor. Like, this is the kind of state that we live in. It's very progressive, right? So if they're not voting Labor, they'll vote the Greens or some other cookie left-wing party, right? Animal Justice, the Greens, whatever, right? They'll vote for one of these guys. Like, it's very lefty socialist paradise here in Victoria. And a lot of people here on the public purse, whether it's public servants or people being paid in welfare, they don't want these systems to change. They're happy with the debt. It benefits them overall. They don't care about the businesses that are going under. They don't care about all the taxes which are increasing. They don't care about the almost $200 billion of debt that we have as a state. These things are not in their mind. They're just worried about their socialist utopia, all these kind of fancy things that they want to do to children as well at schools, and all the ideologies they want to teach. They're happy just for their members to come to one of their pride parades, for instance, right? This is kind of the state that we live in, where people aren't thinking long-term about the destruction of their very lives and livelihoods and the state itself. And unfortunately, we have a really crappy opposition as well. Okay, I'm saying this as someone who's a conservative and someone who's voted for the Liberal Party in the past in many state elections. It's not that great. The opposition is not great. The opposition is not doing an effective job, and that's why these people have always gotten away with things in this state. Rad, this is a hard question. Rukshan, if you led a political party and had to create a slogan to lure voters, what would it be? I'm going to be very unoriginal here, but I love the Make America Great Again. I think that's a great slogan. We also had Keep America Great, or something of that nature. I think that's those kind of 3 words or 4 words. A motto is very simple and easy to understand. I don't think we're that visionary in Australia. Like, we haven't had a visionary type election for a long time, right? Even from the left. I think people are just voting as, practice. There's no, vision for Australia as such from these political parties which are being presented that is, awe-inspiring for people from either side. That's what I love about MAGA and the MAGA movement and what Trump did, because at least it gave people a vision, like, we're going to make America great again, right? It's something there. And I think that what did the Democrats have, or the WEF globalists have? Build back better. I mean, even that as a slogan for the left, I know it means different things, but yeah, build back better. Dean says, Rukshan, your slogan should be deport Avi. That's right. Actually, that will be my slogan when I run for political office. I will be like, guys, the first thing I'm doing as soon as I'm elected is deporting Avi Yemeni. All right, I'm going to send him back. We're going to send him back to Israel. All right, that's the first thing I'm doing when I'm elected. And my slogan will be deport Avi. And the website, you can actually visit this website if you wanted to. I'm serious. Will be deportavi.com. Try it on your browser when you get a chance. Deportavi.com. That website actually works. Comment here from Carmel. She says, we're so happy you are an Aussie. Rukshan, Fernando, wish there were more like you. Good luck. One Nation doesn't care what color anyone's skin. Just they are good Aussies. Love your work. Yeah, I mean, look, One Nation, a lot of people say they're a racist party and all this kind of nonsense. I don't believe it. I've seen it firsthand. I've talked to Pauline Hanson now multiple times, and I've listened to her enough for over a long period of time. She is not the racist that people like to claim and portray her as. You know, yes, she talks about tough issues. Yes, she's been talking about immigration and racial issues for a long time, but that's because it's important. And the discussions that we need to have as a country. Does that make you a racist? No. It's just like the facts of life. Like, you have to discuss race sometimes. It's unavoidable. And I think she does it in a way that, especially now as she's matured and she's been in politics for a long time, you know, she's found a way to get her message across that resonates with more Australians. And that's why you're seeing the results that you're seeing. You know, she's able to cut through to many more Australians than she has been in the past. Now, you can say that that's because of the things that we're going through as a country when we look at mass immigration and the impacts it's having in Australia, for instance. But it's also the fact that she's better at delivering that message of One Nation. So I think that's important. You know, if you're going to change Australia, realistically, if you're going to have a more conservative right-wing government in Australia, you need to have, you know, it can't just be, you're not going to get that. This is probably the best way to put this. You're not going to get that just through white Australians voting or white Australian nationalist types voting for their party that they like. It's not going to happen that way. To actually be in government, whether it's in state or federally, you're going to need a multitude of Australians that, you know, some of them might look like me, you know, other Australians that have different heritage, ethnic backgrounds or immigrant backgrounds. You're going to need a multitude of those people to get into political office and actually have some type of say in government that's going to be effective. The longer that you can't do this for, the longer that we move left, right? Because the left has found a way to cut across these demographics and get them on side, and they are growing their power base. So that's really what's happening. Like, at the end of the day, that's what's happening. So the longer you kind of do other weird stuff and try to throw people offside, or, you know, all these things that maybe sound good in your head, the reality on the ground is we're moving further to the left. And, you know, there's people taking control that want to move it even further to the left. And they will do that. They're being effective. They've done it for a long time now. You know, it's not going to change with a snap of your fingers now. You know, things have moved too far along. And now you have to be smart about it. You have to be calculated. You have to be like One Nation, right? You have to be able to appeal to more Australians to vote for you. And you have to be able to get into different electorates and different seats where there is changing demographics. You got to cut across to that if you want to be effective. Sadov Arya says, we don't have a vision for Australia because we are so fractured that we don't even know what our identity is. Yeah, I mean, it's sad to say, but that's the reality. Like, you know, many countries, like even in America, as fractured as they are as a country in terms of their ideological battles that they have politically, when it becomes the 4th of July, right, let's just say it's coming up, the 250-year anniversary of America, majority of Americans know their history. They know what the flag represents. They know what their country represents as a nation or as an idea. They understand where it comes from. And they have a certain vision of who they were in the past and where they currently are and where they want to go. Like, there is something there. Yes, there's different interpretations of how to get there and who's included and all these kind of things, but there's a general concise idea. Now, I think for Australia, for a long time, they had something like this, but, you know, over the last 30 years, that's disintegrated. And a lot of that comes from the fact that this country has not reconciled with its history in the fact that, you know, Kevin Rudd saying sorry to the indigenous populations of this country, you know, that was meant to fix everything. You know, the sorry wasn't enough, right? You got to give some more land here. You got to do this. Okay. Oh, we got to have the voice to Parliament. All right. You know, none of these things are enough. Victoria, we're going to have a separate indigenous body that oversees all the laws which are being passed. Oh yeah, but we want more. You know, it's always more. It's not settled. All right. The question of Australian identity is no longer settled. They've opened it up, and it's done a lot of damage to this country for sure, because we waste our time talking about every Australia Day. We're talking about, you know, what's an Australian, or the flag is racist, right? The anthem is racist. Everything is racist every Australia Day. And, how did this happen? Like, how did this happen? It's been allowed to happen, and it's problematic. It's problematic because without a national identity, without a unified idea of what Australia is and what it represents, other people can fill that void. All right? I talk about this a lot. People will fill that void. Certain religious groups or immigrant groups, they're like, okay, cool. These, Aussies, whatever, are fighting amongst themselves about who they are, and they're calling each other racist, right? Again, I'm talking specifically about immigrants looking at this. Oh yeah, these two white groups are calling each other racist. One saying they're not, the other one saying they're racist. One saying, oh, it belongs to the Aboriginals. The other person saying it's ours. Or one saying that we shouldn't even be here. We should be sent back, right? So people are watching this happening, and they're saying, I've been privy to some of these conversations. I've heard people talking this way. They're like, what's wrong with these people? Like, who cares? Like, for most people, who cares in the sense that, you got to settle your history. You got to figure out who you are as a people. Because if you don't, other people will come into that space, and they will then control what is that identity. And what happens is when they have enough power, enough control, they will decide what Australians are, what Australian values are, and where this country is going. And that is kind of what's happening. That's the truth. And that's only going to get worse where things are going. I got to have my drink. Let's go to the next story. That's actually a great segue into this topic here, which is Tony Burke on immigration. And this is exactly what I'm talking about. Because this is the message that's being given to immigrants when they come here. And you look at the things which are happening and you think, I look at this and I'm like, how do you blame the immigrants for some of these things? Because it's these politicians that feed this crap to them. And this actually works. This actually works to their benefit. Let's have a listen to this.
Australia want to be part of Australia. The concept of immigration is people, when they come to Australia, want to be part of Australia. That's what people want. And I've never accepted the word assimilation. I don't want people to lose who they are. The word integration is one that's being used as part of a multicultural dialogue for a very long time. And that's what it is. Like, we want people for who they are. I've never subscribed to that sort of melting pot concept that your whole identity is meant to be dissolved. The concept of immigration is people, when they come to Australia, want to be part of Australia. That's what people want. And I've never accepted the word assimilation. I don't want people to lose who they are. The word integration is one that's being used as part of a multicultural dialogue for a very long time. And that's what it is. Like, we want people for who they are. I've never subscribed to that sort of melting pot concept that your whole identity is meant to be dissolved. Concept of...
So, I mean, this is the problem. Like, that's the problem. Like, you cannot blame immigrants for whatever this cooker, Tony Burke, this Labor dude. And this is a Labor philosophy. This is the philosophy of the left that's becoming more and more prevalent. You cannot blame immigrants for this because this is what they are actually being taught in this country, right? This is what is happening in especially immigrant enclaves when their religious leaders are speaking to them, because they're very much ingrained with the Labor Party as well. They do a lot of funding to these, temples or mosques or whatever, right? Doesn't matter. This is the kind of messaging that when they have these interfaith meetings or with meetings with these leaders or community groups, this is the shit that Labor leaders are telling these groups. And then these groups go out there and tell the rest of their communities, hey, look, you don't have to integrate into Australian society. You don't have to do it. The actual Prime Minister and, this Minister for Immigration or whatever Tony Burke is, Home Affairs, he says you don't even have to assimilate into Australian culture. Don't learn English. Don't worry about the cultural values. Just be who you are. Just be who you are. And the problem with that is that can work if the immigration percentage was very small. If, the immigrants that were coming here was a curiosity. It's like a circus almost. Like, there's enough of them. Everyone's curious about who these different people are and the different things that they're doing. But when you have hundreds and thousands of people that are here now that have been given this message by the Australian government, that's what this guy's doing, that you don't have to assimilate. When you have hundreds of thousands of people here from one country or one religious group here, they're not going to be like, okay, cool, we're all individuals, we're just going to be who we are. No, they have dominant cultural streams within their understanding of their culture, their countries, where they come from. And more importantly, a lot of these people are grounded in a shared faith, religious ideas. Some might call it indoctrination, but a lot of it's just to do with their actual religious beliefs. And that binds them together. So what you have then is, Tony Burke's talking this wish-wash about he doesn't want anyone to like assimilate into Australia. And then you have parallel societies lifted up in Australia. Like parallel societies that don't give a crap about the rest of the country. And as they get more and more power, as they get more and more influence, as they become members of councils, of parliament, and they've also gone through this whole procedure of not assimilating into Australian culture, well, then they start pushing stuff which are foreign to the prevailing ideas that actually established a country like Australia. And once you have the numbers, it doesn't matter anymore what we think, right? What I think, or more importantly, really, what many of white Australians in this situation, because for them, a lot of them, the country's changing in front of their eyes. It doesn't matter what they think anymore because there's no influence that they can have on the outcome. Like, it doesn't matter. And that's what's happening. That's what's happening in the UK. That's why you have the problems that you have in the UK, because this is the shit that they were doing back then. And it's problematic. And I'm saying it's problematic because they don't do this kind of crap in other parts of the world, outside of countries like Australia. They don't do it. Like, there's immigration into other parts of, Asia, for instance, but there is a strict definition and idea of what that culture is. And, attempts to change it ends up in either ethnic wars, conflicts, fights. So it's very much protected to, safeguard those cultures so they're preserved. And it's just complete opposite in Australia. I'm not even talking about ethnic identities here. I'm talking about actual cultural ideas and values, like Western values, Western traditions, religious institutions. That's why you have in the UK, for instance, so many churches being turned into mosques or nightclubs, right? If you go around parts of Victoria, you see a lot of pubs and stuff. They look like they used to be churches. So over time, these things happen naturally. Like sometimes there's changes. Obviously, there's changes that happen in society, but it's so accelerated in Australia right now. And you have this type of wish-wash from Tony Burke that's saying that we don't want immigrants to have any type of assimilation in Australia. We just want them to be themselves. It's very problematic. And then people ultimately blame the immigrants for this problem. But this is the left-wing thinking. This is the ideological slant. This is ideological thinking. Most immigrants, if they don't have to assimilate when they come to Australia, they won't, because they're more comfortable. They've come to a country where there's other people that speak in the language that they left behind. They have all the services that they need. They can see people from their own cultures, let's say, and do everything with them. No one seems to really care. The government's putting advertisements in their language for everything. You can get a 5% deposit on a house after you become a resident. You don't have to learn any English. You don't have to do anything to be a part of the culture, and you get all these benefits. So who do you blame? Well, I blame people like this guy, Tony Burke, and the nonsense that they're spewing. It harms everyone. And really, it's got to just ensure that Australia goes into free fall and ends up, I'm not even saying it's just like be as hyperbole that we end up like the UK. We are on the path to the UK. We're about 80% there. Like they're doing the final touches now, right? They're putting on the icing on the cake now. Tony Burke is putting the icing on the cake of turning Australia into a spiral that it can't really get out of. Because once you enter that what the UK is doing, you can't undo it. And even now, it's very hard to undo what's happened. But I think we can still save a lot of the Western ideals, the Western culture, and preserve many of the great things about Australia against this onslaught of the left that we're seeing right now in this country. Yes, that's what I was saying. We're already almost as bad as the UK. I've been to the UK. I've seen what's happening in the UK. It's not that as bad as it is. Sorry, Australia is not as bad in that sense. And I'm not saying the UK is bad. You got to understand, like, it's not like a civil war out there in the UK. But I'm saying the country's been so dramatically changed that they can't go back. Like, It's very hard to go back. And there are political movements like, Reform and Restore Britain, and it's all about these type of ideas. But the numbers are stacked up against them. It's very difficult to reverse that politically after time, if you understand what I'm saying. And a lot of these solutions that we have to be political solutions. These kind of wishes that people have that somehow some person's going to come into power and deport citizens because they're not white. These things aren't happening. They're not happening. In the US, Trump, when he came into power, it was about deporting illegal immigrants. Even with that, Donald J. Trump, with the courts and the system that's there and the opposition from the Democrats, has not been as effective as people would like. And that's just dealing with illegal immigrants. So, these wishes that people have, these fantasies that people have, and, it all sounds good and it all feels great. So they make TikTok videos about it and they, put cool music in the background and, we're going to bring back white Australia and all these kind of things. It doesn't just happen with a snap of your fingers. A lot of these things have to be done politically, and the numbers just aren't there. The change is too dramatic. So what you got to do is obviously be politically astute and change the game, as it were. And that's kind of what One Nation is doing a little bit. One Nation is a thorn in these type of ideas of the Labour Party that they have right now. It moves the conversation. It makes it more comfortable for people to talk about these type of issues in a manner that challenges the views of the Labour Party. That's what you got to do. And unfortunately, it takes a lot of time. It's not going to happen overnight. It's not going to happen like that whatsoever. We have to be very smart about it. I agree with you, baseline, multi-ethnic, not multicultural. Yeah, most of the other parts of the world are multi-ethnic. They're not really multicultural in the sense, but people have their cultural practices, but it's not promoted as something that's, like a melting pot idea, if that makes sense. So, there's always going to be different, there's going to be different practices that people have as humans. It's just common. Like, not everyone's the same. It's just this thing where it has to be accepted, like normalized. Like, for instance, welcome to country is a great example. Like, what is the welcome to country? Like, who does that represent? Why is it being forced on everyone? If you know what I mean. Like, it doesn't really resonate with people. It's just like this forced thing on the nation, and it actually damages the nation overall because no one really understands what it's about. There's no sense of belonging. Why am I being welcomed to my own country? Who are these people welcoming me? Yeah, okay, like, when was this invented? What are you talking about? It's all kind of really weird, right? Those things don't make sense. Anyway, so that's my rant there on Tony Burke. He is the problem. This is the problem that we're facing. 100% individuals like that. All right, guys, let's go to the next story. And this is the NDIS. There's been a bit of a change that's happened, let's say, which is, I think, good in a way. More than 106,000 people would be kicked off the National Disability Insurance Scheme under a government overhaul of eligibility requirements aimed at stemming the growth of the $50 billion program. Now, look, I don't want anyone that's actually needy, disabled, that needs services, that needs assistance to be off these schemes, or, not to have assistance. Like, I want people to be looked after for sure. I'm not I'm not evil. I'm not that. But definitely we have an issue with these type of programs where there is a lot of fraud prevalent. And we talked about that yesterday. We talked about how there's gangs, criminal gangs and enterprises involved in the NDIS, according to the federal police, that were talking about this, involved in money laundering and scamming and running these companies like a scam, literally a scam, right? So for a scam to work, there must be people in there that don't actually need to be on there, okay? But there could be people that get caught up in this. Unfortunately, it's the government's fault in this instance. Health and NDIS Minister Mark Butler unveiled a list of cost-saving measures designed to return the scheme to sustainable levels in a major speech to the National Press Club today, 3 weeks before the federal budget is due to be handed down. The changes are projected to save the budget $22 billion over the forward estimates while avoiding a $13 billion projected blowout over the same period. Under the proposal, standardized assessments of functional capacity would determine eligibility for the scheme rather than diagnosis alone, with the minister declaring that a diagnosis gateway has funneled people onto a scheme that was never designed for them. There's no particular area of diagnosis that will be treated differently to others, he said. The new eligibility rules are yet to be determined, Mr. Butler said, but initial modelling projected the new approach would reduce the number of people who use the NDIS from 760,000 currently to 600,000 by the end of the decade. So it's a bit of a drop. This is 300,000 people fewer than the current projections for the same period. Okay. Mr. Butler said he expected an assessment tool for new applicants would be up and running by the start of 2028, while existing participants will be reassessed against new tests as their plans come up for renewal. Look, this is going to cause a lot of angst, but there is so much to address here. I don't even know if this goes far enough. If just changing the test eligibility requirements will be enough to rein in the scams and the fraud that we see within the NDIS. But a lot of people will look at this as a step in the right direction, because this has obviously been something that has blown out from anything that anyone imagined when this system was first introduced. But there were people at the time warning about this happening, this become the eventual thing, right? You can go back, I don't have them on me, but you can probably go back to the time period when the NDI was being discussed. There would definitely be snippets of politicians or political commentators saying that this is potential outcome of a program like the NDIS. We got a comment here from MCM. NDI was designed to fail its service providers. Yeah, look, the way that it's set up, it does look like it was designed to fail, and it's such a shame because it's meant to help, people. I'm so privileged, right? Really, to have full use of my body and like my legs and my hands, and like I'm okay. I'm healthy. I'm so privileged to have that, and I understand why, as a society, we've decided to help people in positions where they're more unfortunate, especially with things out of their control, right? So I get all of that, but it's just unfortunate how there's something like this has been, the scammers have come into this, right? These cartels and gangs that we have in Australia have also infused themselves into this business. It's disgusting that they're doing that, for one. And the fact that it's been able to run so rampant over the lifetime of the program so far, especially knowing that the government knew about a lot of this, and they did very little. There was very little enforcement, only against a handful of providers, goes to show that they're also responsible for the state of the NDIS today. And these people that are going to lose out on eligibility now under this new criteria, their fingers should be pointed towards the government first and foremost, not the people who have been bringing up these issues to be addressed. Louise Rowling says there's probably heaps of vaccine injured that need it. Well, I mean, I saw a story of all places, Louise, on the, I think the ABC, it was either the 7:30 report or Four Corners or something like this. Just the amount of people on the waiting list to get compensation from the government for vaccine injuries, and just how hard they've made it for people. It was some crazy number. I don't remember it off by heart, but I'm pretty sure it was on 7:30 report. Maybe I'll look it up. But there was an episode on this, and there's so many Australians who are ineligible, even though they are suffering the consequences of potential vaccine injury, because the government has made it so hard. The criteria, they've made it so hard for people to get compensation who potentially were injured by these vaccines. It's problematic. I think that is an issue that's going to be discussed even more in the years to come, or in the decades to come, as the full effects of signing up Australians to the world's largest clinical trial, as Greg Hunt said during that time, come to fruition. And it does look like it's had a lot of negative consequences for Australians. So again, this happens a lot. Governments make people do things and take these kind of decisions. And, 10, 20 years from that point, you see the effects of that on the health system. This is also one such case, I believe. All right, guys, how you doing? So it's 10:43. I reckon we can do one more story from what I have saved. And then we can spend 10 minutes chatting about anything that you want to chat about and any other questions you have for me as well. I think I'll get this one because I haven't actually followed this too closely. But let me get your thoughts on this. More than 3 million Australians over 65 to pay more for private healthcare. More than 3 million Australians aged over 65 will have to pay hundreds of dollars more for their private healthcare insurer per year in a move that federal government argues will re-establish fairness between generations. That's a new one I've heard, fairness between generations. I hope that doesn't become a common trait that they use. In a major pre-budget speech at the National Press Club on Wednesday, Minister Mark Butler announced new sweeping changes to national disability. We heard that. As a part of this, he revealed older Australians would no longer be given special... As a part of this, he revealed older Australians would no longer be given special treatment and would now have to pay the same amount for health insurance as younger Australians. Mr. Butler said the current policy was not fair between generations and not the best use of taxpayer money, with the decision set to save the government $3 billion over 4 years, which will be spent on aged care elsewhere. The government said that about 3.2 million older people would now have to pay, on average, between $226 and $255 more a year, with 44,000 older Australians expected to ditch their private health insurance as a result. Shadow Aged Care Minister Anne Ruston said the government was targeting older Australians who were already struggling to hang on to their private health insurance during a cost of living crisis. I got to agree here with the Liberals. This seems particularly targeted at older Australians for government's failures overall. They're trying to balance the budget by targeting older Australians. It's quite sick when you think about the current condition that we're living in, that people are going through, that these changes to make it fair between the generations is targeting the older generation. They're going into a time where they're scrimping and saving to keep their private health insurance because they know in the latter years of their life, they are more likely to draw on the health system. And these are the people the government is targeting to pay for the mess that they've made of the aged care system. She said the biggest concern was that it would force people to give up their private health, which went against the purpose of the coalition-era initiative, which was to act as an encouragement for all older Australians to have cover to avoid adding to the pressure on the public system. I think that is the most obvious thing. So if more older Australians who use the health services more are ditching their private health insurance, they are going to be on the public system. And you hear the stories like in Victoria with ramping for ambulances and just the pressures that the hospital system is under, for instance, the medical system overall is under. You're putting people who are more likely to use these services more towards the public system. I don't know. I've not researched well on this topic to talk with any authority, but just reading this, it does sound like, the government's just cutting corners to get $3 billion out of older Australians. I think that's going to be widely a controversial point of debate. So the change will require legislation to pass Parliament, meaning the opposition concerns could become a hurdle for Labor. Yeah, I think this is going to be a topic of debate. And I think a lot of older Australians are going to be pissed off. They're not going to be happy about this. And it's the first time I've really heard this phrase, was not fair between generations. I don't know. I personally, my belief is as you get older, especially if you've worked for a long time and you've paid into the tax system, you've been a good contributor to the Australian economy, and you've worked hard your whole life. In your older years, things should become easier for you. Government should make life easier for you under the current system that we have. Right? That's kind of what I believe. So I don't as a young person, I'm saying, right, I'm in my 40s, but as a young person, even younger than this, I would always think like, my elders, grandparents, old people, I don't say that in a derogatory manner at all, not judging people on their age, but I'm saying you'd think that, I generally think that's okay. I don't want it to be fair. I want them to get better than what I have, right? I want it to be cheaper for them. Like, I don't think there's young people going around saying, "Oh, it really sucks that grandpa is not paying as much as I'm paying." I don't think that's happening. So I don't know where they're coming up with this crap. Crunchy here says Albanese is making older people suffer even more, Rukshan. Yeah, look, I just feel just doesn't sit right with me. I don't know. It just doesn't sit right with me. Albanese should respect his elders, the Australian population. I don't know. Maybe he's just more worried about getting young voters. Maybe the young kids these days don't care about the older generation. Maybe they just focus on themselves. I'm sure there's other ways that the government could find $3 billion. I think we send aid to foreign countries, for instance. Maybe cut some of that and, give more money to older Australians so they can have a more comfortable life in their older age. What do you say? Dallas, interesting comment. You're saying that they're also targeting them with euthanasia. They want to get rid of older Australians. Older Australians are not respected anymore. I'll take that as a comment, Adela, but I did see some private euthanasia ads running. Was it in Australia or in New Zealand or somewhere? And Sadov says it's 100% targeted against boomers because younger generation have resentment against them for current climate. That not fair between generations is pseudo-psychology. Okay. And Lyndon Harnell says, yeah, good point. Private health insurance is virtually forced on anyone earning good money. I do know the rates have gone up, but some people do choose to be on the private system just because they feel like it's just quicker access maybe to some services that they need. As you get on in age, and as you see the public health system deteriorate, again, I'm not an expert on this topic. I can only go by the news that I see here in Victoria when we talk about the struggles of our healthcare system. Whether the impacts on the private healthcare system the public healthcare system is felt in the private system, I don't know exactly, but I'd imagine that it would be more pronounced in the public system. All right, guys, so we're up 10:50 p.m. I'm going to probably end this stream in the next 10 minutes. I did have a few other stories to go through. I'll just quickly bring them up, but I don't know if we have time. Let's see what there was. Ceasefire. It's just, we can talk about this some other time. Iran story is always a permanent fixture of the news these days, but Trump did extend the ceasefire with Iran. People say that was because he wants to be able to get in, I think the USS Abraham or one of the aircraft carriers into the region in that time to presume attacks. But there is talks taking place again, I believe, between the two parties. Who knows? This thing goes on and off. And actually, an update from the story from yesterday, we had those teenagers in Port Melbourne. That was that horrendous attack. Well, they've been apprehended by police. So let's just have a quick look at that before we go to questions. A violent
attack in Port Melbourne. As Julia Passarelli explains, they were taken into custody after a chase which ended on a Carnegie Street.
Barricaded by specialist police with nowhere to go, a teen is dragged from a stolen Haval and pinned to the ground, his mate pulled next to him. They're among 4 arrested over this violent ambush in Port Melbourne. 2 boys were hunted down, one managed to escape as the other was kicked and beaten with a metal pole.
That is horrific behaviour. I don't know what's got into the minds of some of our young people, but we cannot tolerate that kind of behaviour.
Before the attack on Monday, the alleged offenders were seen hanging out of an SUV. That car was spotted on the Westgate Freeway just after midnight and tracked to a Carnegie car park. One thug jumped out while the others tried to flee in the Haval, but they didn't get far. A 14-year-old and 3 16-year-olds known to police were taken into custody.
They're all young and they think that...
So yeah, those little gangbangers, dickheads were caught, again, known to police. Surprise, surprise, it's in Victoria. I think the Victorian police knows almost all the little criminals that are running around by name. They probably recognize them and they probably have constant chats with them. Look, it's good that they're being caught, but they'll most likely be let out into the public again to commit more crimes. And look at the level of violence for these young kids. Metal bars and smashing people's heads and in daylight, hanging out of cars. Like, who do these kids think they are? They need to be taught a lesson. And unfortunately, we discussed this yesterday, but the Victorian justice system is not capable of teaching these, little, I don't want to use the terms, but these little kids, the lessons that they need to be taught. I got to be careful with what I say. I don't want to talk too, run my mouth too much. Maybe we can do a show where I tell people beforehand that I'm going to be using foul language, right? I like to talk without using foul language as much as possible. I don't think it necessarily helps to get a point across. Most people are smart enough to understand that how someone feels without having to use swear words, right? Anyway, someone did say in the comments, set off actually a good recommendation. Vivek Ramaswamy, American identity would be good to cover since we talked about Aussie identity at the start. Yeah, let's have a look at what Vivek Ramaswamy had to say about American identity, because this has become, again, this has been very controversial, what he said. But the thing you got to understand about what Vivek Ramaswamy is saying, he is basically just quoting Ronald Reagan from his last speech as president. So he's verbatim almost quoting Ronald Reagan. And he says that as well. So this is the aspirational ideas of what an American is, and the ideas that have gone back to at least, after the civil rights movement, because you got to understand the long, complex history of America with the slavery and segregation, and then coming out of that during the civil rights era. And we see the wounds of that still today. So this is a country that's finding itself over a long period of time. But, since about at the end of the civil rights movement and onwards, there has been this idea of what American identity is. And that's what Vivek Ramaswamy is talking about. It is an idea that's kind of core to the Republicans. Reagan is a very respected Republican president. If you look at even Trump's policies, MAGA even, Make America Great Again, that's a slogan from the Reagan era. We're talking about slogans earlier. So he's very much revered as a statesman of the Republican Party. So that's what Vivek Ramaswamy is quoting. He is talking at a Turning Point USA event, but he is also running for the governor of Ohio. So that's coming up in November. Let's have a listen to what he said, and maybe we'll play Reagan's speech as well so you can see the similarities, because Reagan goes into a bit more detail around this. And I'll share some of my thoughts, and we'll end it on that. But we'll share it, Vivek. Of course, there's a lot of discussion about identity. And because of Vivek, he's an American, he's born in America. They call him an anchor baby. They disparage him because of his skin color. But he's through and through an American. But let's have a listen to what Vivek has to say.
Ronald Reagan understood this well. To some of our, let's just say, parents who are in the back. Okay, we'll address Ronald Reagan from your generation. He understood this well. He famously said, right, you can travel to Italy, but you would never be an Italian. You can travel to France, but you'll never be a Frenchman. You can live in Germany, but you would never be a German. You can pack your bags and live the rest of your life in China or Japan, and you will never be Chinese or Japanese. But you can travel from any one of those countries to establish roots in the United States of America, and you can still be an American so long as you work hard, you play by the rules, you make your contributions, wait your turn, pledge allegiance to the flag, and obtain your citizenship in the right way. That is America. Ronald Reagan understood this well.
So that's what he said. So I'll just kind of read that out if it wasn't clear. He said, you can travel to Italy, but you will never be an Italian. You can travel to France, but you'll never be a Frenchman. You can live in Germany, but you'll never be a German. You can pack your bags and live in the rest of your life in China or Japan, but you'll never be a Chinese or Japanese. Yet you can come from any of these countries to the United States of America, and you can still be an American. So long as you work hard, you play by the rules, you make your contributions, wait your turn, pledge allegiance to the flag, and obtain your citizenship. So really, what the essence of what he is saying is about this kind of idea of America. And some people oppose that today, especially around when you see mass immigration and people coming into your country and they're not assimilating and they seem to hate your country as well. It's made all this very problematic. But essentially, America sees itself as being different to, Italy or France or Germany. These countries have more of a ethnic identity when it comes to who they are. So there is a specific Italian ethnic identity that is well understood. Same for the French, same for the Germanic identity, right? It also applies to the British identities, like the Anglo-Celtic identities, that you have specific ethnic groups that are well understood historically. Whereas in America, obviously, you have people coming from all parts of the world. Yes, initially they were from the Anglosphere of Europe mostly, but then you have a lot of different people from parts of Mexico, American Indians, and so on. And then you have the international migration that happened in the 19th century onwards, in America specifically. And it was this idea, this great idea of America, that you come to America from wherever you are, and you become a part of that society, and then you become American. And that is what makes America different to Europe. And I think that's something that's made America proud for a long time. And that's why it's been a part of the American idea. So that's what Vivek Ramaswamy is talking about. But those comments are based off, they're based off a speech by Ronald Reagan. So let's just play the speech. And it goes for 4 minutes, but we'll let it play. In the meantime, guys, while this speech is playing, if you have any questions for me, put it in the chat, and I'll bookmark those questions or comments, and we'll finish the show off with that. So we might go a little bit over time. We'll probably finish around 11:15. Let's have a listen in.
Since this is the last speech that I will give as president, I think it's fitting to leave one final thought, an observation about a country which I love. It was stated best in a letter I received not long ago. A man wrote me and said, "You can go to live in France, but you cannot become a Frenchman. You can go to live in Germany or Turkey or Japan, but you cannot become a German, a Turk, or Japanese. But anyone from any corner of the earth can come to live in America and become an American." Yes, the torch of Lady Liberty symbolizes our freedom and represents our heritage, the compact with our parents, our grandparents, and our ancestors. It is that lady who gives us our great and special place in the world. For it's the great life force of each generation of new Americans that guarantees that America's triumph shall continue unsurpassed into the next century and beyond. Other countries may seek to compete with us, but in one vital area, as a beacon of freedom and opportunity that draws the people of the world, no country on earth comes close. This, I believe, is one of the most important sources of America's greatness. We lead the world because, unique among nations, we draw our people, our strength, from every country and every corner of the world. And by doing so, we continuously renew and enrich our nation. While other countries cling to the stale past, here in America, we breathe life into dreams, we create the future, and the world follows us into tomorrow. Thanks to each wave of new arrivals to this land of opportunity, we're a nation forever young, forever bursting with energy and new ideas, and always on the cutting edge, always leading the world to the next frontier. This quality is vital to our future as a nation. If we ever closed the door to new Americans, our leadership in the world would soon be lost. A number of years ago, an American student traveling in Europe took an East German ship across the Baltic Sea. One of the ship's crew members from East Germany, a man in his 60s, struck up a conversation with the American student. After a while, the student asked the man how he had learned such good English. And the man explained that he had once lived in America. He said that for over a year he'd worked as a farmer in Oklahoma and California, that he'd planted tomatoes and picked ripe melons. It was, the man said, the happiest time of his life. Well, the student, who'd seen the awful conditions behind the Iron Curtain, blurted out the question, "Well, why did you ever leave?" "I had to," he said. "The war ended." The man had been in America as a German prisoner of war. Now, I don't tell this story to make the case for former POWs. Instead, I tell this story just to remind you of the magical, intoxicating power of America. We may sometimes forget it, but others do not. Even a man from a country at war with the United States, while held here as a prisoner, could fall in love with us. Those who become American citizens love this country even more. And that's why the Statue of Liberty lifts her lamp to welcome them to the Golden Door. It is bold men and women yearning for freedom and opportunity who leave their homelands and come to a new country to start their lives over. They believe in the American dream, and over they make it come true for themselves, for their children, and for others. They give more than they receive, they labor and succeed, and often they are entrepreneurs. But their greatest contribution is more than economic, because they understand in a special way how glorious it is to be an American. They renew our pride and gratitude in the United States of America, the greatest, freest nation in the world, the last best hope of man on earth.
So, yeah, I mean, going back to that, that was a speech from Reagan. That's what Vivek Ramaswamy was quoting today at Turning Point USA when he was talking. And that's kind of verbatim. The first part of that, anyway, was a quote from the speech given by President Reagan. Again, we're talking about identity. That's the aspirational view of American identity. Of course, that's under hot debate at the moment. And a lot of people have issues with, it's very different. The era of Reagan in the 80s to where we are today, the world is different. I admit that. It's definitely different. But people still have these aspirational hopes, and they still fight for these things. And a lot of people believe in that. And a lot of Americans believe in that. Vivek Ramaswamy believes in that. Much of the Republican Party believe in that. I got some comments here that we'll get to now. So thanks, guys, for all the comments and watching. And I hope you guys enjoyed the show. We're finishing off in the next 10 minutes. If you're wondering when all this is going to end, we've got a comment here from where we go here. From Paul Murray. How you doing, mate? Therefore, the problem we have is that too many immigrants don't want to be Australian. So in the Australian context, yes, we've discussed this at length on this show today about what's happening in this country. But yeah, many people don't see themselves as Australians. Weirdly enough, multi-generational Australians who are, definitely Australians, now you have people saying that they're no longer Australian, that they don't identify with this country and that they're invaders. So it's a weird type of world we kind of live in, right? That's all I got to say about that. Montana Meow, thank you for the comment, and also thank you. I appreciate the super chat as well. I appreciate that on YouTube. Thank you so much. We've got a comment here from Zadoff, who says the romantic idealism did create the America and patriotism. It was also the foundation of Australia that I love and became a part of. It's all changing now. Everyone is pulling at the country. Definitely. I mean, I view Australia still, as an idealized version of Australia. For sure, I have, aspirational views for Australia. I haven't given up, let's say. I see it very important, actually, for people like myself who have been given great privileges and great opportunities by being in Australia, by being in this country. Such a great honor that it is incumbent on us to give back to the country and actually contribute in a positive way to love the flag, to love the anthem, to be patriotic, and to ensure that others in this country who are maybe being pulled away from that, to push them in this direction as well, because that is the ultimate thing that you can do for being given the privilege of living in some of these countries, right? It is a great privilege. That you have to understand that if you can see the world and the conditions that many people live in outside of the West, it makes sense that people want to be a part of the West and be a part of these countries, but so many people are disrespecting that from outside coming in and also people from within. So I still view, my role, my gratitude, all within this same context of doing the utmost that I can for the opportunities that I've been blessed with by being an Australian. It's very important to me. Dean says, another great American president who wasn't a career politician. True. Ronald Reagan, once an actor, a favorite of America, did become the president. And I think he was a good president. You can go back in the Reagan era. And I did see earlier a comment saying that he was blamed a lot for the stuff that, Carter did. Right, the one-term president, and horrific fumbles under Carter. But Reagan did bring the country back, and he oversaw some historical changes within America as well. And you see that resonate today through the Trump administration, and Trump very much is a hardcore Reagan fan for sure. This is Jake says there is a rumor the independent candidate in Farrer, New South Wales by-election is not independent, but a Labor plant funded by the lefty lobby group Get Up. This is not fair. It's fraud. Okay, I'll have a look at that, mate. I'll see if I can find anything on that as well for the next show that I do. Look, I wouldn't put it past Labor or any of these kind of, vote whispering guys that do this stuff to be involved in some shady activities, alleged shady activities in these kind of by-elections, especially when the margins are so close. I wouldn't be surprised that this kind of thing is going on. So let's just say that. Greatest country in the world, and I'll be entering a green card lottery next year. Well, good luck, mate. If that's actually you're doing that, that's good luck to you. I think Australia is the greatest country in the world. So I know we have our problems. I think we're better than the Americans. I think overall we're better, but that's just me. Bloke says drill baby drill in Gippsland. When will we be back on next, Rukshan? So look, I don't know. Let me know if you guys want me to do tomorrow night as well. I can do tomorrow night. Usually my plan is to do shows from Monday to Thursday. And in between that, we would have the opposition podcast as well. So I'll probably be back on tomorrow night. Thank you, Yasmin, for watching. I appreciate it. I'm glad you find me uplifting. Zadov says, you and I are both on the same wavelength and you are fighting for the good fight. We are truly blessed to live in an amazing country. The OG Aussies calling themselves invaders are the line of fire. Yeah, lint of fire. Yeah, I mean, it's very problematic. I'm telling you, it's very problematic when you have people who are multi-generational Australian now identifying as not being Australian. I mean, there's something going on. It's very problematic. Crunchy, if you want for me to definitely receive it, you can email me realrukshan@gmail.com. That's probably the best way. realrukshan@gmail.com. It's great to have the AFP headquarters watching. I don't think it's real, but it's just funny. Australia is a shithole, and I'm the AFP commissioner. Thank you, commissioner. Thanks for watching. I hope you don't do a early morning raid on my premises. All right, Commissioner? Spetsy says, we need more memes for one nation. He who controls the meme controls the social platforms. I don't think we're in the meme era yet. I think, we're a few years away from replicating what's happening in American politics, where it's very meme heavy. I don't think we're there just yet. We're only tipping into the part where politicians are making reels and stuff. The meme thing will definitely be coming to Australia as well. It's these days it's even easier to make memes. Like I remember when I was making memes during the COVID era, I was doing rotoscoping individual frame by frame and putting heads on different things. These days you can just get AI to do most of that work. It's crazy. It's very easy to make funny political memes, but they are trying to crack down on that a little bit as well, right? Rook, did you have previously covered the drug imports trade from Fiji to Australia? No, I have not covered the drug trade from Fiji to Australia, but I know there is a lot of illicit drugs coming into Australia from parts of Oceania. I didn't know Fiji specifically, but it kind of makes sense. We also have the tobacco issue that we have in Australia. I know there's Interpol, I heard, was looking into this as well, because that's how bad organized crime has become in our state. It's not really a topic I'm an expert on, really, to be honest. I see the organized crime stories. I don't really go delve deep into it, and I'm not an expert on it. But yeah, definitely, the drug issue is going to become a greater issue in Australia. for sure. And it's going to impact younger generations as these synthetic, kind of products are sold into the Australian market, and a lot of young people consume them. Rukshan's dog is very quiet tonight. No barking. Yeah, so I think he's had a few walks and he's happy. Guys, thank you for the super chats. Baseline Benny, I appreciate it, mate. Thank you so much for joining in the show and contributing to help the show as well. I really appreciate it. Dean, thanks, mate. Thanks for the super chat. Thank you so much. Guys, thank you so much for being a part of the show and helping me tonight with your comments and driving the conversation in different directions. I hope you're enjoying this format. Get it out there, share it around, get more people to join in that that want to be a part of a political discussion like this. I don't think it's been done so much. There are shows in Australia, there's podcasts and things like this. I do it live, right? I know other people do it live as well, but it's, I bring in the news stories, we bring in the comments. There's a lot of discussions happening live. It's very interactive. So help me grow this, guys. Jump on Twitch. If you're watching on Twitch, I see one person on Twitch still. Guys, thank you. Subscribe on Twitch. But you can also follow me on Facebook, X, Instagram, Rumble. I'm on there at Rumble as well. YouTube, @TheRealRukshan. I use the same handle, @TheRealRukshan. And you can find me there, guys. So more of this coming. Like I said, I'll probably be on tomorrow as well, 9 o'clock. And then eventually I think I'll make a timeline. I'll have a schedule so you know exactly if you want to tune into the shows, you can tune in live. Otherwise, you can catch up in the morning, right? And I should eventually cut these up into little videos. That was the hope. That was the hope. I do these live shows. I talk to you guys, and then eventually it gets sliced into videos where I'm talking about topics. I just haven't had the time to do that. There's a lot going on. Got another super chat at the end. Appreciate it. Zadov, thank you so much. I appreciate it. Thanks for the comments today and moving the discussion as well. Spets, Twitch OG, thank you so much. Adios, mate. Jake, thank you, mate. Thank you for joining in. I'll check up on the Farah for sure. I'll check up on that. Thank you. Night, buddy. Good night. We got here Owlstool. My dog was a rock star again today, swimming in the lawn in the surf, so piss off, Point Dexter's. Okay, mate, I'm very lucky dog to be able to swim. I wish I took my dogs out to swim when they were younger, for sure. Also, Crunchy, last comment here says China got caught with the hand in the cookie jar. I think that was one of the ships, right, that the Americans intercepted, and it had chemicals that were used for weapons coming from China. So look, you can't trust the Chinese, the CCP. I'm not talking about Chinese people in Australia. I'm just saying the CCP. You can't trust them. You can't trust the Russians. Right? Their interests aren't Western aligned, and this is a good lesson for many to learn. Good night, Tracy. Thank you, and Anna, Zen. Good that we can have these honest conversations. I agree. Thank you. All right, everyone. Good night. See you all tomorrow night. Take care.